Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Today I'm going to analyze the remaining paths forward for any hopes of stimulus that are left. Which, remember, I made a deal with you that I would shave as soon as the next stimulus checks come out. Which this is becoming a problem. Even more of a problem than the fact that I have to wear a jacket to walk around outside right now because there's such an ash layer in the sky in California that it's cold. All right, folks, let's get into the paths forward, and then I'm also going to give us a note about testing that has me a little bit concerned about COVID towards the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. And of course, remember to use that amazing coupon code down below to join the excellent programs on money, making YouTube videos, real estate, stocks, and more. Okay, there are two remaining paths. Path number one is what I call the return of the Democrats. Realistically, since May, there hasn't been a lot that's gotten done from Democrats. Now, in fairness, Republicans in the Senate have not been very successful either, but let's be real. Democrats have mostly verbally agreed to lower the amount of the HEROES Act from about $3.4 trillion to somewhere around $2.2 trillion, which is where the current sort of verbal offer stands from Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. However, Democrats, when they return to work this Monday, they're going to have 12 working days left in Congress before their October recess begins on October 3rd, which is a Saturday. 12 working days is not a very long time, and usually these working days are used to pass a budget, which generally needs to be passed by October 1st. However, Democrats and Republicans have already mostly agreed on what's likely to be called a clean resolution, a clean continuing resolution, or a CR, to essentially keep the government's expenses as they are and keep the government funded past the election so that we can avoid a government shutdown. There's some minor details to be worked out, like exactly how long this should last, just past the election or into December or January, but a deal is expected on us and the framework has already been agreed to. This might really put the ball in the House's court now to say, hey, well, what else are y'all doing? You got 12 working days in September. Let's get to work. Let's get something done. And if the House now takes the HEROES Act and maybe pares it down, shaves it down to $2.2 trillion, or even better, maybe gets it down to say 1.9 trillion, goes to show how crazy these numbers are. Anyway, then maybe the House can use that to finally say, look, you want to know what would be in a pared down bill? Here you go. Because that's been a common complaint from Republicans in the Senate. That, oh, well, Democrats won't even tell us how they want to spend the money. We've heard Mark Meadows say this. We've heard Steve Mnuchin say this. So I put the onus on Democrats now. Put something together. Obviously, there's more divisiveness in the Senate, so why don't we take a more unified House and actually get a compromise bill together and use that new compromise bill as sort of an olive branch and an opportunity to negotiate. The beauty is we already know what Republicans want. They voted on it yesterday. Liability protections, PPP funding, school funding, and we know that many of them are totally okay with another round of stimulus checks. So in my opinion, for us to have a path forward, it's not going to arrive out of the Senate. The Senate is gridlocked, and paying attention to the Senate is more stress-inducing than having to check to make sure that your life insurance is still active by looking at your phone and realizing, oh, nope, it's good, still Apple paying every single month. Because remember, you could sign up for life insurance in as little as 5 minutes via the link down below. Right next to the link to get one free stock worth between $8 and $1,600, which means you get an immediate return of 8% on your money if you deposit $100 with Webull. Anyway, if the House takes up their own version of sort of a HEROES 2.0 bill that's skinnier, I believe we could see a real path to stimulus. And I think it would be a slap in the face to America for the House not to revise their HEROES Act. If they've already verbally revised it, why not put it in writing? Let's see the offer. As a real estate broker and a real estate investor, that's how you get deals. Verbal can offend. When you put something in writing, people start thinking about it. Okay, path number two. I would say at this point, and sort of knowing the history of Congress and, well, Donald Trump, I'd say path two is probably the more likely path to a stimulus package. path number 2 is Donald Trump's path to executive actions. We've seen this before. We already know about Donald Trump's payroll tax cut not working out. We know he got unemployment through for 5 to 6 weeks, the student loan or deferments through the end of the year, and the eviction protections for many tenants. Probably somewhere around 95+% of tenants are protected under this eviction bill. We also saw him pass an executive order to give children 18 or younger free food for the rest of the year. So remember, if you want to be a part of that program, pause the screen or pause the video now and find out how you can join right here. I really think everybody who has children under 18 should take advantage of that. Why not? There's no shame in that. And so really the second path comes from Donald Trump's ability to get through a second round of executive orders. And so if Donald Trump can take that $300 billion that he keeps referring to as sitting in an account, then maybe, just maybe, we'll actually be able to see another round of stimulus checks, which is obviously going to be very popular for Donald Trump. And you can expect that Donald Trump is itching to get these checks out, although I think he's probably going to wait for, in my estimation, if we have to wait for Donald Trump to do it, it's probably going to take longer. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes right when Congress goes on recess again, because then he could throw up his hands come October 2nd and say, look, Congress didn't get anything done, but fear not, I, your president, will take care of it. You know, obviously that's going to piss some people off on who maybe might be detractors of Trump, and supporters of Trump are going to love that. That's right, you do it without Congress. So obviously there are going to be tensions, but I don't think anybody's going to be upset about getting a check. Then of course we might also see sort of this extension of this unemployment framework, which is already in process. I mean, now that the FEMA framework for unemployment already exists, it would be a lot easier to say, hey, we put money in the FEMA pot again. Keep the program going again for another 6 weeks. Potentially something you could see, which, think about it, if you see that around the first or second week of October, you'd see an unemployment boost right through the election again. See how kind of that timing could conveniently line up, where there's no cliff come election time, and Donald Trump would be able to cheer, look, I got you stimulus checks in early October, I got you unemployment through August, early September, and heck, even through October, maybe not the last part of September. I'm sure there'd be some kind of donut hole there. And the other thing we know they're working on fixing the payroll tax cut, which if they can figure out a real fix to the payroll tax cut, I am a supporter of the payroll tax cut. I realize it leaves out people who are retired and people who are on disability, and I do think that that is unfair, and that's why we do have to cut or sort of couple the payroll tax cut with stimulus checks. But the payroll tax cut has the potential of helping everybody who's working save an extra $6.20 for every $100 they make. There is a real benefit to that, and it can be done without defunding Social Security, even though it comes across as, wait, if you cut the Social Security funding, where does that money come from? Debt. It's just more borrowing. Now, there's also the argument that, well, maybe we shouldn't borrow more money. And this is true. And in fairness, we are at the lowest borrowing costs we've ever had. 10-year Treasury bonds are like 0.6%. This is as close to free money basically as it gets. And it makes sense for the government to borrow. In fact, in times like this, there is no shortage of economists saying we should borrow. In fact, Peter Van de Water of the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities says that, quote, robust fiscal stimulus will speed a recovery and thereby lessen the rise in the debt ratio. In some circumstances, in fact, the debt ratio may eventually be lower than it would have been under a less stimulative policy. And this is heavily due to low rates, which means we can support a higher debt ratio. But yes, at some point we will need to address rising deficits and rising debt. Deficits being budget deficits, shortfalls in the budget, which add to the debt. But not now. This is a common theme amongst economists. And this makes it very clear that, okay, maybe it is definitely a time to do one form of stimulus or another. So these are the two paths forward that I have my eyes on. Now, I do want to make a quick note about testing, and I'm planning on making a more thorough video on this later on the channel today, so probably in a few hours, check back. And stay tuned too, because if you check my channel regularly, you'll see that I post a lot of content on real estate, money, stocks, how to build your credit. but a lot of these videos don't always get suggested to you. So keep in mind, if you just type in Meet Kevin and you search the channel, you're more likely to see some of the recent content that's on the channel than just waiting for the homepage notification. Sometimes the notifications don't even come through. But anyway, the thing that's very interesting about testing is, in previous videos, I've expressed a lot of excitement over testing, that if we could just test enough, then we could open up again. We could have Dave & Buster's open again, which, watched my video yesterday on Dave & Buster's. I'm extremely disappointed in their earnings call. It was a disaster yesterday. But anyway, then we can have airlines open again and malls open again, and everything can try to go back to normal. The problem is, it looks like we'll actually have to, in order to truly avoid infections from COVID by saying, hey, well, I've been tested, you would essentially have to be tested every single day. And that's because of the 14-day incubation period of COVID, that if you got exposed on, let's say, a Monday, you could still test negative for COVID for potentially up to 14 days thereafter, but have it, and then on day 15, oh crap, here you are spreading it. It's a very, very, very tricky illness. And so the testing, not that great. Not that great. That means there are a lot of people getting tested, and they're probably hitting false negatives because they're getting tested too early. So I'll talk more about this specifically a little bit later on, and I'll talk about how this relates to the stock market and some stock plays that we should be considering. So there we have it. In the meantime, if you like this kind of content, do consider subscribing, consider sharing this if you like the perspectives that I share, and hey, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, and bye.